Today we are doing a 2-round NFL mock draft. So this is Seth Dewald's NFL mock draft 1.0. I don't know how many of these I'm going to do. If we get a good response to this, then I might do more. We'll see. But without further ado, let's just kick it off. And just to lay some foundation here, this is going to be what Seth Dewald would do for each NFL team, okay? So we might have some unpopular picks here. You might tell me how stupid I am in the chat. That's fine. I really don't care. This is what I would do for each NFL team. So it could get wild and crazy. We'll see exactly how insane and dumb this could possibly get. Let's go on this journey together, shall we? But before we do, click like, subscribe to the channel, fix your life, get that done. Thank you in advance. All right, let's start with Tennessee. And I think it's pretty obvious, and maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's not obvious, but I think Cam Ward is going to be the pick here. I think it should be the pick. They need a quarterback. I think Cam Ward is the best quarterback on the board. I think it's a pretty easy decision. Now, with the Browns, I really do think if they could trade back here, I think they would. I don't think that they're going to take Shedeur Sanders. But at the end of the day, you know, when you take a look at the Browns' need, I mean, they do need a quarterback. They need offensive line. They need edge. And so the best player on the board for them is, in my opinion, it's Abdul Carter. And I think that's probably going to be what they do. That's what I would probably do. So Abdul Carter goes to the Browns. Now we have the Giants. And to be honest with you, I think they signed Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston for a reason. Now it would make all the sense in the world for them to take Shedeur Sanders. I don't know if that's what they do. They have some pressing other needs on their roster. You know, like they could use offensive line, they could use a corner, they could use a defensive lineman. So what I'm going to do for the Giants is maybe unconventional, but I think I'm going to give them Mason Graham. All right, defensive interior pass rusher. They ride it out with Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson at quarterback. Maybe they even look to trade back. I don't know. But this, you could also make the case, oh, this is a team that's desperate, whatever. This is the Patriots. This is going to be pretty easy. They take Will Campbell. They get an offensive lineman for Drake May. And then that leaves Travis Hunter. The Jacksonville Jaguars take the best player available on their board and on my board. Travis Hunter is going to go to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I think they'd be doing backflips and cartwheels because they need a corner. I think he's probably going to play corner there if he gets drafted there. Now we move to the Raiders, and this is what Seth Dewald would do. This is not your typical mock draft. So I know everybody and their mom has them taken Ashton Genty. That's the popular move right now. But, you look at what else the Raiders need. They need a wide receiver. They need a cornerback. They could use offensive linemen. All right. So let's just give them the best corner, I believe, in this class. And let's give them Will Johnson from Michigan. And the running backs are probably going to fall a little bit here, at least for me. I doubt Genty's probably not going to fall out of the first round. So the Jets, the New York Jets. They could also use an offensive lineman. They could also use a wide receiver. We have Tet McMillan staring him in the face. I don't think they go that direction. I do think that they're going to go offensive tackle Armand Membu from Missouri. He's been rising up the board. A lot of people like him. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan. I think Campbell's better. I think Kelvin Banks is potentially better. But I do think it's a good fit for the Jets. And if you look at, the coaching staff there, I think that they want to build from the inside out. This leaves Tet McMillan just available for the Panthers to take at number 8, and I think they would jump at the chance to add Tet McMillan. I think that'd be a perfect fit for Bryce Young. And then we move to the Saints at pick 9, and the Saints are a weird team. I'm not going to lie to you. They could use a corner. They could use an offensive lineman. I think that there's a cornerback on the board that makes a lot of sense for them, and that's Jahdae Barron from Texas, so I'm going to have them take him. And then the Bears, man, Genty staring him right in the face, Tyler Warren staring him right in the face, but I'm not going to mess around. They're taking an offensive tackle for Caleb Williams and the crew. They're taking Kelvin Banks, and they're not going to think too hard about it. Next, the 49ers, they could use some pass rush. They could use some interior defensive linemen, offensive line. And this is a team, that I don't think they've really been too afraid to take chances. So I think Mike Green makes a lot of sense for them. And then here's the spot where I believe Ashton Genty makes all the sense in the world. So Ashton Genty in my mock draft is going to come off the board here. He's going to be a Cowboy. And now we have some offensive players coming off, because Jonnu Smith had a really good year for the Dolphins, but I think they could use a tight end. But they're not going to be the team that takes the tight end. All right, I did a reverse swerve on you guys. They're not gonna take the tight end. They could also use some offensive line. They could also use some defensive line, a safety, and Malachi Starks. Feels like a good fit for them. So I'm gonna take Malachi Starks, and then the tight end comes off the board with Tyler Warren going to the Colts, and that would be just, I think, the perfect fit, the fit of all fits. Now it's time to really get going, because Luther Burden, come on down for the Falcons. I mean, can you imagine Luther Burden paired with Drake London? Luther Burden played a lot of slot snaps, and Drake London could be the outside receiver, and then Kyle Pitts, maybe that frees him up a little bit more. I love that fit. And Arizona could also use a wide receiver. Arizona could also use Emeka Egbuka. I think that would be a perfect pairing with Marvin Harrison Jr. Again, Egbuka can play more of a slot role. He can play outside. I think Egbuka is a little bit more versatile than Luther Burden, although I do think both receivers can play slot and outside receiver. So the Cincinnati Bengals have an issue right now, and that issue is, they're trying to work out Trey Hendrickson. So maybe they take a little bit of the edge away from him and just take Mikael Williams from Georgia. A lot of upside with that pick. And they get some depth with their edge rusher just in case they can't figure out Trey Hendrickson. Now we move on to the Seahawks. And I think they just keep it simple, stupid, and they take the best offensive tackle left on the board. They could use some protection. I think that's probably their number one need is offensive line. So they take Josh Simmons from Ohio State. And then we move on down to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They could use a linebacker. They could use a cornerback. They could take an edge rusher. I think that this makes too much sense for them to not take Jahad Campbell, the best linebacker, in my opinion, on the board right now. And that's one of their top needs. And then we move on to the Broncos, and we know Sean Payton loves weapons. We know that he loves tight ends, and I think that this is likely where a tight end gets taken, and I think Colston Loveland makes a ton of sense here. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Seth, what about Dion's kid? What about Shedeur Sanders, right? He hasn't been taken. I mean, I could scroll up here. Cam Ward was taken, but we have no other quarterbacks taken. I'm saying this is what I would do, right? Not what PFF would do. This is what Seth Dewald would do. And because it's what Seth Dewald would do, it's not going to be Shedeur Sanders that's taken here. The Steelers are going to shock the world and take Jackson Dart at pick 21 because they need a quarterback prospect to pair with somebody. I don't know what their long-term plan is going to be. Justin Fields is gone. Russell Wilson's with the Giants. That's the move I would make. I have Jackson Dart ranked ahead of Shedeur Sanders. We'll see if Shedeur Sanders makes the second round. We'll see. I don't know. He might be drafted a little bit higher than that, but we're moving pretty good here. I like this pace. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. So now we move on to the Chargers. And the Chargers could also use a tight end. They could also use a wide receiver. Kenneth Grant is sitting there for them. I mean, Michigan, Jim Harbaugh. I like building in the trenches, and I think that this makes a lot of sense for the Chargers. So they take Kenneth Grant. And we move on down to the Packers. The Packers, man, they could go in a lot of different directions. I like as much as it pains me to say, I think the Packers build their teams the right way, and I think that they take and I'm gonna mess this name up, the pass rusher from Boston College, Donovan Ezuraku from Boston College. Not gonna lie, I had to look that up to pronounce it correctly, so hopefully that's not wrong. And now the Vikings. So the Vikings did a nice job upgrading their offensive line. They could still use offensive line. They could still use some help in the secondary. But the Vikings are also another smart organization. And I don't know. Like they could go in a lot of different directions here. I'm stalling for time. But what's presented to them on the board, honestly, I think I don't like this might be a key trade down spot. I'm not going to do trades in this one. I figured for the first one I wouldn't get all convoluted and do that. I think maybe they could use some interior defensive line help, and maybe they go Walter Nolan from Ole Miss. So there we go. Let me know what you think of that. And now the Texans. The Texans, I think, could use a wide receiver to pair with Nico Collins. Oh my God, I don't know why that was escaping me. So I think they could use a wide receiver. I think that this makes all the sense in the world for Matthew Golden to go there. You pair him with Nico Collins. I don't know if you can really count on Tank Dell to stay healthy 100% of the time. That takes the pressure off of him. And I like that fit quite a bit. I think if a wide receiver gets taken by the Texans, we're really going to like that for fantasy with CJ Stroud. I mean, CJ Stroud is the perfect quarterback if you're looking for a guy who's going to distribute, not run a ton. Now we move on to the Rams. And the Rams, they could use an offensive lineman. They could use a linebacker. They could use a corner. Corners, they're really, Trey Amos from Mississippi, but they're kind of further on down the board, or at least how I would view it. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But I think that they could probably use a Gray Zabel type player. I do think he could play tackle, maybe a better fit at right tackle. But in the first round, getting an offensive lineman there, I feel like that's a pretty good fit for the Rams. And now we have the Ravens. And the Ravens, I don't know, man. The Ravens just always seem to they just seem to pick up. It's like them and the Eagles just seem to, pick up what the draft gives them. And I know James Pierce comes with some question marks, but I think that this is the team that could take a chance on a James Pierce. They're taking the best overall player on their board that's left on the PFF board, and that I would think is the best player available. And they don't think too hard about it. And they just do it. They pulled the trigger on James Pierce, who has a ton of upside. And the Lions are sitting there thinking, gosh, we could have had James Pierce. That would have been a really nice pick for us. But I still think the Lions are going to go edge because they saw what happened when Aiden Hutchinson went down last year. So I think that they're going to get Nick Scourton from Texas A&M, and they bolster their defensive line. And now we go to the Commanders, and I think it's cockamamie, really, to say that they need a running back. I think the Commanders could also use an edge rusher. I think that they could use another wide receiver. I think that is a low-key, sneaky destination for them. You know, even though they've added Debo Samuel, I think that adding another wide receiver wouldn't be a bad idea. But in this particular scenario, I think that they're probably going to go with the edge rusher, Shamar Stewart, and we're going to go back to back Texas A&M pass rushers here. So now we move on down to the Buffalo Bills. And, the Buffalo Bills, they could go in a lot of different directions here. Cornerback is a need for them. Wide receiver, you could say, is a need for them. Defensive line, edge rusher, safety. So they could really, if they wanted to, they could go best player available. And I think, there's a player that, Daniel Jeremiah has ranked really high and hasn't gone yet, and that's Jalen Walker. Now, he's listed by Daniel Jeremiah as an edge rusher. So I think that he's a pretty versatile player, but he's listed as a linebacker on PFF. So I think that that would be a nice fit for the Bills, and I think that they can target wide receiver or, maybe a skill player a little bit later. So now we go to the Kansas City Chiefs. Gosh, the Chiefs really need help with their offensive line. I don't know if they really love their options here, but I really like the tackle from Minnesota, and it might be a reach here, but Ursary from Minnesota, I think could really help them in the short term. So I know Connerly was there from Oregon. Like, if we just sort this by offensive tackles, Donovan Jackson was there, Marcus Mimbo. So there's a lot of good options. Ozzy Trapilo, probably a bit of a shock to see him go ahead of Connerly or Jackson, maybe for some people, but I like Ursary quite a bit. And then we have the Eagles, and the Eagles just find a way to just kind of, I think, soak up value. They're going to need an interior defensive lineman. Milton Williams obviously signed elsewhere. So we're going to give him Darius Alexander from Toledo, and that's going to round out round one. Again, let me know what you think of round one. Like, subscribe. We're going to keep rolling here to round two. And this is the moment, I think, where with the Browns in round two, where Shedeur Sanders comes off the board. And his wait on draft night is now over. I don't love the landing spot, but I think that's probably what I would do if I were them. So Shedeur Sanders, and you take him before the Giants can potentially take him. I think, if he falls this far, I think this is probably his floor. So the Giants are probably pissed that they didn't get Shedeur Sanders. They took Mason Graham in round one. This is an interesting situation. Like, they could still use offensive line, linebacker, corner, obviously quarterback, but I think that they've convinced themselves that they maybe have solved that problem. I think that they take an edge rusher in Landon Jackson from Arkansas. He's another guy with high upside in this class. So I think that that's probably the direction that they go. I would continue to build the defensive line, and again, it's such a weird situation with them because you can make the argument, man, lame duck head coach, lame duck general manager, as I've said. We're gonna now move to the Titans. So the Titans, they take Cam Ward in round one. They could still use an edge rusher. They could still use a wide receiver. And I do think it makes a lot of sense for them to add weapons to help Cam Ward. They have an offensive head coach. And I think, like, looking at the wide receivers here, I like Alec Manor, Jack Besh, Jaden Higgins, Xavier Strepo. They still have really high. Trey Harris. I think Trey Harris makes a lot of sense here for the Titans. I really do. I like Trey Harris quite a bit, and I think he's catching some strays right now. I'm not really sure why that's happening, but it appears to be happening. And you pair him with Calvin Ridley. You have two guys who can play on the outside. I like that fit quite a bit. And now we move to the Jaguars, who were thrilled beyond thrilled to get Travis Hunter in round one. So they have a corner slash wide receiver that they can use. They could still use an interior defensive lineman. And the board kind of shapes up pretty well for them here, to be honest with you. So I think that they take Tyleik Williams from Ohio State. I think that's a player I like a little bit better than Harmon. Now the Raiders, all right? The Raiders are sprinting to the podium to select Amarian Hampton. They did not go running back in round 1. They are rewarded for that, and they take Amarian Hampton in round 2. And the Patriots are now on the board. And the Patriots did not go wide receiver in round 1. You know who feels like the perfect Patriot? That would be Jack Besh. And I think Jack Besh is going to go a lot higher than people think. I think Vrabel's going to absolutely love him, and they could use another weapon for Drake May. So I think Amarian Hampton, Jack Besh, and now the Bears, who could also use a running back. They could also use, a pass rusher. And man, this is a tough decision. But I'm in charge, I suppose, for the Bears. And I'm probably gonna say, but I don't think I'm gonna go with any of those positions, and I think I'm gonna go Xavier Watts, safety from Notre Dame. I think that's a really solid player. Jaquan Brisker has been dealing with concussions, so they get a nice back end safety to help that defense. And now we have the Saints on the clock, and again, the Saints might be the strangest team in the NFL. They went corner in the first round, so they filled that need, and now perhaps they're looking to the offensive line, maybe defensive line. And I think Josh Connerly makes a lot of sense for them at offensive tackle. So I think they're happy to get a corner and an offensive tackle. Now the Bears, with their second pick in round 2, this I think is where, and this to me feels like the perfect fit for a guy like Trevion Henderson. I don't think that the Bears are happy with either running back that they have on the roster. Remember, DeAndre Swift was traded a couple years ago on draft night. Ben Johnson was the offensive coordinator for the Lions that season. And I don't think Roschon's done anything that's really made them believe in Roschon. But Trevion Henderson here feels like a Ben Johnson fit. And now we're on to the Jets. And the Jets took the tackle in round 1 to help their offense. And now I think that they continue to build their defensive line. And I think they take Princely Unamilan. Oh, man, I butchered that. Unamilan from Ole Miss. And they just continue to build in the trenches. And now the 49ers, who took the edge, Mike Green, in the first round. They could use, you could argue that they might need a wide receiver. Debo's gone. Brandon Ayuk's coming off of an injury. But I think that they're another team that I would probably still look to the trenches. And I think it's time for them to take an interior lineman and Derek Harmon. I think it's far away, time for him to come off the board. So the Cowboys go Genty in round 1. And, the Cowboys, I don't know if they're going to be very good this year, but they could use another wide receiver to pair with CeeDee Lamb. And you start to look at the wide receivers on the board here, and I'm scrolling down. And, it kind of dries up. But I do think, and this is just what I would do because I love this player, Alec Ayumanor feels like a really good fit with the Cowboys. He can play outside. CeeDee Lamb can play outside. He can play in the slot. He's a versatile weapon for them. He's big. He's fast. He has some technical work to do, but that feels like, to me, that's, I'd be doing cartwheels, if Alec Ayumanor wound up on the Cowboys. Now, the Colts went tight end, Tyler Warren. They were probably thrilled to get Tyler Warren in round 1. And now they probably are looking at the board right now and they're thinking, man, we could use an offensive lineman. Potentially we could, use an edge rusher. But I think that this pick kind of lands perfect for them, and they take Demetrius Knight, linebacker from South Carolina, and just kind of take the best player on the board, both on PFF and their board. That's what I would do. Now, the Falcons were thrilled to get Luther Burden in round 2, or in round 1, rather. And so you start to look at what they could do. They could go defensive line, corner, offensive line. And I do think that there is potentially a player that they could use. I know it might not be popular. I just had to check real quick. But I love these both edge rushers from Ohio State, and I think Jack Sawyer would be my pick here for the Falcons. So let me know what you think of that in the comments. We're rolling on down to Arizona. They took Emeka Egbuka, so they go wide receiver in round 1. And they probably would prefer to take an offensive lineman or a pass rusher here. But just kind of the way the board stacks up for them, I don't know if that's a perfect fit, but I do think Tyler Booker would be a nice fit for them. So they get a weapon, they get some protection for Kyler Murray. Love that pick. Now the Dolphins, they could use offensive line. They could use defensive line. They took a safety in round 1. This is just kind of, I think, what's going to happen. There he is. Donovan Jackson to the Dolphins. I think if you want an offensive lineman in round 2, I think you might have to reach a little bit. Again, who knows where these guys are going to go in the NFL draft? Like, that's going to be a premium position in this year's draft. So the Bengals went edge rusher with Mikael Williams in round 1. This is a team that their defense was not great last year. So I think that they probably are going to go, at least this is what I would do. I would probably go Nick Emanori from South Carolina, who's an absolute beast. And if they get him here, I think they're doing cartwheels. Again, I think that's a pick that, if I was a Bengals fan and I come out of this draft with Mikael Williams and Nick Emanori, you have a ton of upside in both the secondary and an edge rusher. We have a couple picks coming up from Seattle, so they went offensive tackle. Now, they're another team that I think could look wide receiver, and I think that's where they're looking here. And if you think about what they have, Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think Jaden Higgins makes a ton of sense for them from Iowa State. So I think he's going to be the pick. And now we move on down to the Broncos. So they go tight end with Colston Loveland. Broncos, we're going to start churning some of these running backs here. They are absolutely over the moon to take Quinshon Judkins. Quinshon Judkins is a true 3-down running back. He can catch passes, pass protect, run inside, outside the tackles. So Quinshon Judkins to the Broncos in a home run landing spot for us in fantasy football. We absolutely love that. And now back on the clock are the Seattle Seahawks, who had their offensive tackle. They took a wide receiver. And, their needs, they could use a safety, defensive line. They could continue to build the trenches. I think that they are boring here, and they just take TJ Sanders, who's PFF's best graded interior lineman, defensive lineman, and they just move on, and they're happy with that. Tampa Bay, they went linebacker, Jihad Campbell, early in the draft, and I think that they continue to add to their defense and take JT Tuamolo from Ohio State. Again, those Ohio State pass rushers, I really liked what I saw from them this year. Big fan of both. Now, Green Bay is on the clock, and Green Bay, they go Ezeruco. I got that right earlier. Donovan Ezeruco from Boston College. So they went edge rusher. This is another team, if they go wide receiver, I'm not really I don't really know what I think. I don't know if that's the direction that they're going to go. And there's some corners right now on the board that I think would be interesting to them. So I think Trey Amos from Mississippi makes a ton of sense for them to take. So the Chargers are a team, they signed Najee Harris, right? Oh, they signed Tyler Conklin. That's right. The Chargers signed Tyler Conklin at tight end. So again, I it's there. I think the best NFL teams don't make themselves needy for any specific position, so it kind of opens them up to take what's best here available. And and taking a look at their needs, I don't really think they need a linebacker. I don't know if they need a tight end, but I'm just gonna do it. I'm kind of struggling with this pick. I'm gonna give him Mason Taylor, and that he gets a year. Maybe Tyler Conklin takes most of the snaps in year one. Mason Taylor eventually becomes their tight end of the future. I feel like that's a pick that Jim Harbaugh could get behind. Let me know what you think in the comments. Now the Buffalo Bills are on the clock, and in round one, they went best available. They just take Jalen Walker. And now the Bills, they have 2 second-round picks. So they have 56 and 62. And so they kind of went edge, linebacker. They could use a cornerback. And luckily for them, the 2 cornerbacks available, I'm just going to give them Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky. They take the best cornerback on PFF's board here. It's a position of need, and I think that is what they will do. Now, Carolina went wide receiver with Tet McMillan. They were thrilled with that, but they still have a lot of needs. Just think about it: edge rusher, safety, corner, wide receiver. I mean, we filled that need for them. They could also take another wide receiver if they wanted to. But again, I think if we kind of look at this, Kyle Kennard makes a lot of sense for them as a pass rusher from South Carolina. So I think that's going to be my pick. The Texans took Matthew Golden. So they went wide receiver in round 1. And I think in round 2, again, this is a team that struggled to protect the passer. So I think that they could be looking down the board here for an offensive tackle. And I think Marcus Mimbo, or Marcus Bo, is the M silent? I don't know. And then we have not the Patriots, the Ravens. All right. And the Ravens, they scoop up James Pierce, right? And, they have Derrick Henry, right? And I don't know. The Ravens, man, the Ravens, I think, just keep taking good players. Trenton Simpson, Raquan Smith, Tavius Robinson, Kyle Van Noy as their starting linebackers currently. I don't know. It might not make sense. I think Carson Schwessinger is a hell of a player from UCLA, and I think if they add James Pierce and Schwessinger, those are 2 really good defensive players. Now the Lions are back up on the clock. And the Lions, they went pass rusher with Scorton. They addressed that need. And I think that they're probably looking at the board right now and going, man, there's a lot of defensive linemen that we like. And I think Shamar Turner from Texas A&M, they continue to add to the trenches, that they kind of fell apart defensively last year. So I think that's the direction that they're going to go. We're rounding out round 2, and thank you for sticking with us. Washington Commanders are on the clock. So they went Shamar Stewart in round 1. So they address a defensive edge need. Let's just give them the best cornerback left on the board, and Siobhan Ravel, PFF's best corner, come on down. And now the Buffalo Bills are on the clock again. So they've taken linebacker edge and Jalen Walker, Maxwell Hairston. And it wouldn't surprise me if this pick is a skill position player. So If we go to wide receiver, I think honestly that this would be a nice pick, and it might be redundant. I don't know because of what Khalil Shakir is to them. So maybe I won't go that route. There was some talk about James Cook, not them not being able to reach an agreement. I'm just saying Caleb Johnson's on the board. I'm just going to throw it out there. And I don't know how the community would feel about this. The fantasy people. But Caleb Johnson here feels like an awesome pick. And now the Chiefs. And the Chiefs, I think, again, they're when the Chiefs are fed up with something, I think that they throw resources at it. And I think that is going to be offensive line. So I think Ozzie Trapilo from Boston College, they take another stab at offensive line. And then to round this thing out, we have the Eagles. They continually dominate the NFL draft and just kind of take players, that kind of slip through the cracks. And I think it makes all the sense in the world for them to take one of these edge rushers, either Brandon Swinson or Jared Ivey. And I'm just going to give them Swinson to round out round 2. So we're going to see what PFF thinks of this. We'll recap this real briefly. Again, thank you for watching. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, Mason Graham, Will Campbell, Travis Hunter, Will Johnson, Armand Membu, Tet McMillan, Jade Barron, Kelvin Banks, Mike Green, Ashton Genty, Malachi Starks, Tyler Warren, Luther Burden, Emeka Egbuka, Mikael Williams, Josh Simmons, Jaheed Campbell, Colson Loveland, Jackson Dart to the Steelers in a shocking pick, Kenneth Grant, Donovan Uzariku, Walter Nolan, Matthew Golden, Gray Zabel, James Pierce, Nick Skorton, Shamar Stewart, Jalen Walker, Arante Ursay, Darius Alexander to round out round 1. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. And until next time, be good, everybody, and we will see you later.